I think brand's important, and your message, therefore, and your identity is vital. And our identity is we work hands-on with fast-growing businesses, and it's a positive momentum journey that we're trying to be a part of. We'll stick with that identity rather than going, oh, well, you can make money doing something else. It's not just about making money. It's about us staying true to why we started.
Hi, I'm Ricard West, CEO of Red Flag Alert, and today I'm joined by Paul Cheetham, founding partner and CEO of Sedulo, and we're in the fantastic Regency Suite here on Deansgate in Manchester. Paul, thanks for joining me today. Do you want to just give us a bit of an introduction into yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I'm obviously Paul Cheetham, as you just said. I set the Sedulo up 2009, so it's 2026 today, isn't it? So 17 years ago. We've now grown to just shy of 230 staff. We've got 5 offices in Manchester, where we are now, Birmingham, Leeds, Liverpool, London. We'll talk a little bit about what our growth plans are, because we're opening a few more this year. I'm an accountant, but and that's how we started. But now I think probably accountancy, Richard's about 25-30% of what we do, max.
Yeah.
So I class as what I say is a full service agency or a full service business consultancy firm.
So on that point, being full service, is there a particular reason why you've avoided going down the insolvency route?
We've been offered loads of times, as you'd expect. So when I was an accountant, I qualified as an accountant in industry, right? So 21 to 24, I left uni, became an accountant, but I was working in industry down the road in Manchester, right? So internally with an accountancy firm. And when that company grew, they'd kind of throw at me, Richard, all different types of things to deal with, anything to do with numbers. So if you needed a mortgage, he just thought his accountant did that.
That's Paul.
You know, if he needed tax advice, his accountant did that. If he needed to invest his money, an accountant did that.
Yeah.
So I kind of had this, I was kind of useful, even though I was just purely an accountant, of course, where I'd have to have the an IFA that I work with, or a tax or a mortgage person that I work with. When I went to work in practice, because that was my second job, we didn't have all that in the practice that I worked for in Bramhall, up near where you are. And so I thought that was I didn't think that was the best strategy of the organisation to work to, right? Yeah. Because a client needs to sit in the middle and all the services around them need to be there.
Yeah.
So when I set up this, it was always over a period of time, which we've done, create every service, right? So that's why we have the service lines we've got. The only one we haven't got, as you've just asked, is insolvency. And the reason being is this: we want to do it, for companies like you, fast-growing businesses, usually in fast-growing sectors. And I think the idea of saying we'll be your growth partner, but if it all goes wrong, we'll bury you, I don't think works. Just for us, by the way. I'm not saying it don't work for others, because I know it does. And I know actually in a lot of organisations like ours, the most profitable part in some of them is the insolvency part.
Or at least in the restructuring path.
Exactly, yeah. And I've just seen ones getting sold today. KPMG selling off their restructuring part today to Bridgepoint, I think, for a fortune. And anyway, we just avoided it because I think you've got to stick to your lane a little bit. Yeah. We'll talk about that again in a bit when we talk about private equity in the industry. But I just think that idea of saying, come with us, we've got everything, we're going on a growth journey with you, we'll find you funding, we'll get you your R&D rebates, we'll give you board, a non-exec if you need it, we'll do all these great things. But if it don't work, we've got an office down, on the third floor.
And you also have a clear conflict of interest because you can't really do the insolvency to the customers that you're working with. You're going to have to farm that out externally anyway. So you're almost you can't even leverage your portfolio in that respect. You can use it as a olive branch to share.
You use it for currency, don't you?
But you can do that anyway without having it.
You do.
You can do that without having it. And I think if I look at insolvency in general, the hardest gig, there's nothing in it reoccurring. You do it, it's done. You do £1 million worth of insolvency work. Next year, you've got to go out and find another £1 million worth of insolvency work. So it's an interesting one. I've always wondered it, because the story about we work with each other, but for years, you were on my radar because we both enjoy the occasional post on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I remember years ago when I was sat at the top of Deansgate, there was this accountancy was a core market for us.
Yeah.
And not many people on LinkedIn were vocal in the accountancy sector, bar one chap at this point, a younger, more unpolished version of yourself, raw Paul. And I remember messaging you for absolutely years. Like, there's a LinkedIn message and you finally go, yeah, the time's right now to talk. And that was probably about 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting concept around that insolvency piece, because one of the things I've always worried about is for you to be a full service firm. Is that something that you ever see yourself going into?
Just not. Never. I just don't think it fits with our narrative. And I think you've got to... I think having a brand, what I didn't realise growing an accounts firm, we'll probably touch on this in a bit, is how important brand is.
Yeah.
You know, I can't believe really how important... how important brand is on somebody's audit certificate.
Yeah.
It's like such a stamp of approval. And I think growing brand for me has always been important, which is why it's not called Cheetham-Karcz. It's called Sedulo, which no one can ever pronounce, including your team here. But I don't blame anyone, because half the people who work here can't say our name, and I think sometimes you have to go back to brand. I think
you could have picked a friendlier name.
I do think that. I think brand's important, and your message, therefore, and your identity is vital. And our identity is we work hands-on with fast-growing businesses, and it's a positive momentum journey that we're trying to be a part of. And so I think we'll stick with that identity rather than going, oh, well, you can make money doing something else. It's not just about making money. It's about us staying true to why we started, which is one of my biggest challenges 17 years in.
We're coming back to that point about working with growth businesses. You are a recognised growth business yourself in an industry where growth is not notoriously recognised. And I say that for the fact that if you go onto LinkedIn, how many business development directors or marketing directors do you see in the professional service industry? Minimum. You know, a lot of accountants I talk to still rely on having their shop in the right place. Referrals are all via word of mouth, which is clearly unsustainable and unforecastable. But being a high growth business yourself, how important is it having that multi-service offering as an accountancy firm to generate that growth? And I suppose my second point on from that is, out of all of those services, is there a particular service that is your land and expand strategy?
So if you talk about the services, first of all, the most important part, and we talked about this off camera and it'll probably come on to in a minute, is, in a nutshell, we provide services. Yeah. Can't forget that. In a world of consolidation and growth and everything else, actually at the middle of it is a client. What do they need? So that's the most important part. Secondary to that is, when you're growing quickly like we are, if you're an accountancy firm, you do a piece of work, you send out an invoice and you get paid. Yeah. And as you grow, as we started to grow, because that's what we were, 1 million, 2 million, we got to about 2 million, we started to bring in newer or more service lines with different business models, and that's the important point. Because if you keep growing and growing accountancy, all you do is grow your debtor book. Yeah. Risky. Yeah. Right? So I was lucky when we got to a couple of mil thinking, I need some bolt-ons here for the client, but from a business safety perspective, risk. So the first one I brought on was wealth management. And the reason why I brought that on was because you get paid at the end of the month by your insurance companies. So we don't issue invoices. So we raise an invoice, we get paid. We raise an invoice, we get paid. So that's totally different now. And plus the recurring nature of our financial planning meant it de-risked us. Then I think we brought on corporate finance. So that sent it the other way. Because now you might do a piece of work for 9 months, 12 months, and you get paid when it completes at the end. So you can't grow drastically in one area. So what I've created over 17 years is a business that has different business models. Some raise invoices and get paid on 30 days. Some you have to wait till completion. We have a big debt funding brokerage where you get paid on completion, but you're doing high volume. So there's a mix in there, and that was vital as we were growing quickly to have different business models that service clients. So when you look at the land and expand, it changes that over a period of time. Because when R&D was relatively new, we put in a sales team that use your software, which we'll talk about in a bit. And there aren't that many accountancy firms have a sales team even. We do. So we have outbound sales and quite a few of them. And we'll see at the time either what fits with us as a business. So audit is one that fits with us as a business now. But along the way, it was other things like R&D. So that just became an opportunity. So when R&D was around, it was like, let's fill, or let's focus on that being our land and expand strategy. When you look at our acquisitions, because we've done a few ourselves, they've been different as well. So we've acquired in Leeds and Liverpool, and we've acquired general practices there, accountancy firms, so we can sell everything else. When we did Birmingham, we bought an R&D business and reversed it the other way. So that gave us our anchor and our niche in that market. But actually then we focused on selling audit, financial planning, other grants, so on and so forth. So it's a moving feast. It's a moving feast.
I think it's an interesting point that you raised there about, so your acquisition strategy, it might not be your whole strategy, but when you're looking at a location, you're not looking at going full out capital investment into a office and then scaling from there. You're already looking at where can I buy something relatively probably specialized in one area, so it's known for doing a really good job in R&D, accounting, corporate finance potentially. So they've already got that brand awareness locally, or at least a ledger of customers that are happy. And then your real strategy is going in, acquire that, having that anchor in that area, and then wrapping around your services to that. So straight away, your first challenge is almost is how do we cross-sell into this current book?
Totally. If you look at Leeds, which we did in 2018, it had a revenue of about 1.8 million from memory. And within 2 years, or in the second financial year, we doubled that. But we hadn't doubled the 1.8 mil. That core business was still about 1.8 mil. It was a wraparound of everything else. Same with Liverpool, which we bought in 2022, 21. One of them, anyway, but same thing, similar, 1.5 million revenue, and that office did 3 million 2 years in. The core book was still doing 1.5, but it was everything else.
So you've managed to, that core book, is that through tackling churn with new acquisition of logo, or just pure retention strategy on maintaining that book? Was there a little bit of both? What
it does, Rich, is it gives you the anchor to one cross-sell. Right? Services that they need that your general practitioner can't do. But that's not the most crucial part. What it allows us to do is, say, put in our debt funding team or another division that doesn't even feed off that database, but it provides us the anchor to bring them in. So if I look at Birmingham, we had an R&D client base, and then the first thing we did is brought in 4 debt brokers. Now they weren't feeding off that base, but without the recurring fee, without them paying for the office and fixed overheads, we weren't able to bring in 4 debt advisors. So it works both ways.
So you've mentioned database a few times there. Then how important is data as a part of the overarching strategy from a Sedulo perspective?
Data, tech, AI becomes more important and will only get more important. So if I look at what we built so far, it's predominantly people-led. Right? if I look at what we look like in 10 years, it is a blend, equally probably, of data, tech, AI, and people.
Yeah. And people doing more of the soft skill stuff.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
That's what you want. And you've got no choice in that. Because, by the way, people ask me about AI, and I'll come back to data in a second, mate. But to me, it's all mixed. But people ask me how AI is going to change this industry.
The accountancy sector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I go back 26 years, which is how long I've been doing this job, you could get a P&L balance sheet and cash flow automated
Yeah.
from Sage when I was around, and obviously it's Xero predominantly now. So automation's existed in our industry for 26 years,
Yeah.
but it's not took away. It's not took away any fee.
No.
What it does, technologies allow you to do the stuff you don't want to do if you're an accountant, and work with the stuff, work with the end product to do the consultancy advisory. So that's how I see it all working. Now, database here is vital to us. It's vital to understand what we're selling to our current clients, what we're offering our current clients. It's vital, of course, it is when we are doing acquisitions and how we feel is upside to what they're doing and what they're not doing. And of course, we use your software a lot for our customer acquisition. We've got an SDR team here and a BDM team of 15 or 20, and they all use your software.
Yeah.
Right before they forgot the word now.
So.
Yeah, hopefully so. But when they're doing the preparation, when they're prospecting. Word. So we use the database for that, for our prospecting. And then we use the database, we use your software for our onboarding.
Yeah.
And then we use your software for monitoring.
Yeah.
As monitoring as they go along with our existing clients. So it's like we have lots of different teams using your software for a multiple of different services.
So if we put the software part to one side and we just focus on that data piece, in your opinion, how important is it that there is a single source of truth running through the organization? So first of all, can I say it's extremely refreshing to hear an accountant and a CEO of an accounting firm to say we employ SDRs and BDMs, because I think there's a lot of firms out there where they probably do, but they don't dare call them those titles. They'll be called research development executives. So congratulations on that. But data can find its way into your organization through lots of different ways, especially when you start to include sales and marketing. You've got a lot of outbound, you've also got a lot of inbound and data coming through. But as you mentioned, one of the points there is that when you're engaging with a client and you've got that client to that point where they want to build a relationship with you, you then have an internal process. And data, unfortunately, in regulated industries means that you then move in from sales and marketing to how do we actually onboard this customer now? Do we actually know this customer exists? Through to the part that you were looking at in terms of the portfolio management piece, which is how to look after our WIP, but also the overall portfolios across 5 different sites. How can data work for me and the team to go, this has happened today? How do we use that across all of the services in our organization to ensure that we're in the right place at the right time for our customers? So I suppose the point is, how important do you think it is today to have a reliable source of data? Although different data can come in at different points from different sources, but having one single source of truth that runs through the organization, whether you're sales or in credit, where you can sit there and go, it's reliable, but also everyone in the business has access to that same piece of insight.
And what I would say is, I think the most important thing about this business is the people, right? And the second most important thing is data, right? So, and by the way, I think if you sat with, well, it doesn't matter whether they're accountants or advisors or solicitors, or if you sat with a reasonably sized business, right, owner or CEO or management team, if they were honest, they'd all have problems with the data. I believe if they're honest, they're all going to have problems with the data. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you we haven't got problems with data. We have got serious problems with our data because we're a high growth business.
Yeah.
So what we needed on day one was a spreadsheet, right?
Yeah.
And if you're like me, you still like spreadsheets, right? Because I'm still an accountant at heart. But on a serious note, they don't do the job.
No.
Right? So the thing about it is understanding your client on that, I forget the description you just said.
That single source of truth.
That single source of truth is vital. And yet the truth of the matter is, how many of us have got it right?
Yeah.
Because it's almost, it's a never ending, it's like paying the Humber Bridge really with that.
Yeah.
Because it's a constantly moving feast, particularly in a growth business like ours.
I think that point's massively important as well, is that data, almost like strategy, is perpetual. And like I said, what worked for you when you were 15 million 3 years ago to fast forward 3 years and you're at 25 million with aspirations to become a 40 million pound business, the way that you use data is going to
get more sophisticated.
100%. Yeah.
And the database needs to be, and the software needs to be more sophisticated.
And as your organization grows, people accessing that information all need to be able to sit there and go, when I look at that customer, I'm looking at the same information you are in accounts, and you are in finance, and you are in sales, and you are in marketing. So I think that's a massively, I think a lot of people don't have a data strategy that runs alongside their growth strategy. They want to grow by 20%, but what's the data driven? How do we use data to enable that?
Yeah.
Whether that is in a practice like yours, which is got a corporate finance team, where are the next growth businesses in Manchester? And how do we use data to identify those and put our practice in the right place at the right time?
And the thing about the database, the most important thing about the database is not so you can cross-sell services into your clients.
Yeah.
It's because the client wants an interaction with our business.
Yeah.
And when they have that interaction, they want you to have the knowledge at their fingertips or the information at their fingertips. One of the biggest issues that we have to get around is, if you look at what we might do from a client, we might be doing the payroll, we might do some bookkeeping, we might be doing tax advice, we might be doing the R&D, we might be doing the capital allowances, we might have got them a debt fund. If they ring in or they get in and speak to somebody and the person they speak to doesn't know that, they don't feel valued as a client.
Well, also,
as a customer.
I think you could probably have got away with that even pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, where people can now, I talk about this a lot, you can sit in your house and you can get your favorite restaurant to bring to your door.
Yeah.
You can get Amazon to drop milk off same day. You can get stuff freighted from Australia in 24 hours. Consumers, people expect rapid gratification.
Yeah.
And the point that you raised there, which is if a client rings it and the AM or the accountant's not on standby, how important it is to have a system, a process, a data lake where anyone in your organization can pick it up and deal with it.
Correct.
Because in that moment, if you just put them on hold or take the details, say we're going to call you back, consumers aren't used to that now. They might pick up the phone and talk to another finance broker, for instance, or they might pick up the phone and go, you know what, actually, Sedulo do my accounts, but could they actually help me with my wealth management? I'll probably try.
The biggest criticism you could ever get is they do me accounts, but they don't know my business. Right? That would be the worst or the biggest critic you could have.
Yeah.
They don't know my business. Right? So by them ringing in or however they, communicate inbound now, they expect that we're able to know whoever they're speaking to across the board, their business, or them individually. Nothing worse than going, oh, you got my tax return wrong because you only dealt with half of the information at hand, and you know the information at hand because you deal with my wife's tax return, or you know I've got kids who are 18, or if you haven't got a place that holds all that,
Yeah.
then it comes back to what I said right at the start of this when I talked about my first job. It's about having the client in the middle and everything around it.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what's around it and you've only got access to 3 of those 12 touch points, you're going to get something wrong.
How do you keep that philosophy, or should we say value, as you scale?
Well, that's probably the biggest challenge. It's probably the biggest challenge. We're just about to go international. You know, we've just got 2 acquisitions.
Is that with the Scotland office?
Hey?
With the Scotland office?
Yes. We've got, we're looking at Scotland at the moment with 2 offices, and we're looking at Dubai. And every time we go outwards, we just need more sophistication. It's as simple as that. And it is a huge challenge. I always wonder sometimes, and you'll know better than me, but I always wonder, is it because we're 17-year-old and we're growing so quickly that we're so challenged and we're trying to keep up?
Yeah.
Or if I went into someone who's 80 years old, would they have the same problem?
Or would it
Actually,
be
I've
fake
bought,
problem that compounded?
I've bought 2 businesses that actually were 90 years old and 50 years old, and they had even worse problems than us, and they were smaller.
And to be compounded. Yeah, yeah. It's an interesting one because I've always been a huge, again, I'm coming on to red flag now, but I've always been a huge advocate in our monitoring facility.
Yeah.
Not because it was originally designed to be able to sit there and go, Paul, here's where all your future insolvencies are, where you're going to get stuck. But more for the fact that if you're in a people business, which we're saying accountancy very much is a people business, you're dealing with an organization, you can't also build your strategy around Richard's going to pick up the phone today and talk to me about that problem. So one of the things I've always advocated is the monitoring solution, whether you use Red Flag Alert or another service, also gives that ability for everyone in your organization to put themselves in the right place at the right time. For instance, you know, you might have an R&D client and we can see that it's a manufacturing company based in Burnley, doing pretty well, but it gets hit with a $500,000 insolvent bad debt where one of its clients goes bust on it. That might not change your R&D relationship, but what it should do, what I'd hope it would do, is cause someone in Leighton's team to pick up the phone and go, that 500 grand bad debt, you've already paid for the goods, you've built stuff, you've distributed it, and you're in a tight margin industry, you've now got a cash flow issue, potentially. How do we now help you with that versus that business owner burying their head in the sand and waiting too long and ending up on the insolvency pile? So I know it's not always led to insolvency, but I've always been a big advocate that, especially if you're scaling a business and you go from having 100 clients to 1,000 clients, how can you ensure that your team are in the right place at the right time to have those types of conversations? Is that something that internally you guys proactively look at?
It's the challenge, right? It's never going to be good enough, is it? So the reality of it is knowledge is power, right? So the more knowledge you have over the customer, the more ability we've got to service a customer to the levels I demand we service them at. Simple as that. And so if you look over the, even in, what are we now? When did we bring in our CTO and project team?
Was that about 12 months ago?
Yeah, probably a bit longer. Probably about 2 years, 2.5 years ago. So again, there's this recognition that data, tech, automation is going to become even more important. And the fact that we're getting to a size where we just can't do without it.
Yeah. For example, you usually got SDRs, BDMs, CTOs, CIO, marketing director, all in a professional service firm. Go back to the young Paul in Bramall.
100%.
Did those job titles even exist?
Not in my firm that I worked at. And now we just took on it starts today actually, head of chief risk officer. So one of our biggest areas of risk, of course, is data and cyber security. So, you know, we've had to recognise that and understand that further down the line, we're going to come up against some issues if we don't have a chief of risk. So he started today, and his first job, I sit with him in 2 days' time, will be to look at data, cyber security.
But it's an interesting one though when you talk about that, because what you're alluding there is that reputational risk that comes with being hacked, a cyber threat, onboarding the wrong type of customer, or a customer that you didn't know that happens to be someone that probably we should have done a little bit more due diligence on. In a business where you say brand's important, how important is it to ensure that you're doing the utmost? Because I'd still believe it's impossible to do everything by the book. Regulations and law, the reason why there's lawyers out there is that you can play either side of the line very, very finely. But how important is it for what you're building here in a business that's organically growing to ensure that your reputation at all times is as clean as it can be, if that makes sense?
In our industry, what's more important than that? I don't know if there is anything more important than that. Which is why we'll do 30 million, I think, this year. And we've got a C-suite board that I think do you need it yet at our size? Don't know. But I know we're going to 14, 50 mil.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, I didn't quite understand how important brand was when I said, well, I say that. I was particular about the brand that I chosen in terms of brand name, and I was about individual brand, as you alluded to earlier.
Yeah. Personal brand's massive.
Yeah. What I didn't quite understand, it's like we deal with some huge clients now, but they'd never let us do the audit because they need one of the big four, for example, on the audit certificate. And that kind of filters throughout the next size business and the next size business and the next size business until they get into the mid-tier and they go, oh, we're happy to now accept a mid-tier accountancy firm on our audit certificate. That's the game we're in. And that's purely based off brand. Yeah. In a way, Nike sells T-shirts because there's a tick on it. It's no different in our industry. So you can't afford, if we look at what we spend on brand and advertising and marketing, probably £1 million a year. And we've been spending that for a while.
Yeah.
And that's getting deeper. And one false move, and it's all up the wall.
So on that point, so heavily and always invested in brand, image, marketing, acquisition of new customer. And you say that numbers remain the same or probably steadily grow with your growth ambitions. How has your spend changed on risk, compliance and governance?
Well,
because there's a cost to doing business as an accountant. There's also a cost to growing as a business and as an accountant.
Yeah. And if you go back to when we bought Leeds in 2018, we turned over, when we bought Leeds, 4.5 million, right? So we started 2009. You're talking about 300 grand turnover, 500 grand turnover. It took 6 years for us to get to £1 million. Then we went 1.5, 2 million quid and bought Leeds 4.4, give or take, it was something like that. When we bought Leeds, we didn't have anybody in the business. So 7 years ago, we didn't have anybody in the business that did anything. We had the regulator, we had the regulatory guy, but we didn't even have a tech. We didn't have an IT person. So we brought in IT only 7 years ago. So 7 years of a 17-year journey, we've had IT literacy, really. Forget anything else. So then we built 3 or 4 of them and had an IT team. Then I brought on a CTO because I started to get more worried about risk. Then we brought in, we've got a team of either 3 or 4 of our own developers internally because we develop our own stuff.
I've seen some of your apps.
So we develop some of our own apps and that we'll do more of. So then all of a sudden you've kind of got a team of 4 who we're managing now IT risk. And then you bring in the CTO and he brings a whole lot of different. I'm just talking about tech risk here. Now we've got a chief revenue officer. But if I look at our wealth planning team, of course, we're highly regulated by the FCA. So we have a risk committee. Well, now we have a risk committee as a group. So we've got a risk committee as a group, a risk committee for our wealth management. We're regulated by the ICAEW for our audit and so on and so forth. So that has its own risk committee. So that's a mini risk committee. We've got a risk committee here, an investment committee there. I don't even know how many people we've got in. It's got to be at least, there's got to be 20 people in the organisation.
That's mad when you think about it in the span, in the time span. So from Leeds to today,
7 years.
growing your headcount to people that aren't doing the work or aren't winning the work. Yeah. They're actually the operations team that allow you to continue to trade.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. 20 people.
And now our CMO, so our head of marketing, comes in, and the first thing she looks at is risk. She starts looking at what we're posting on LinkedIn and saying, actually, we've got a brand risk issue here.
With you.
Probably. She's why I post less now. Will not know us.
I did see they'd be toned down a little bit.
Yeah, so it's a constant in it. At first, it starts with regulatory risk, and that never goes away.
But obviously, that's recently just changed. Then it's data as well. Obviously, there was the SRA issue in the legal sector that's now crept its way into the accountancy sector slightly, where the FCA are going to take over AML rules for your industry. Yeah. But obviously, you should probably be in the best place to handle that because you've already got a wealth management side that have worked under the FCA. Yeah. But you've now got to bring that gold standard across every part of your business. How is that another reason for now looking at bringing in a chief risk officer?
I just think, Richard, when you get to a certain size and plus the size of clients we're working with, you've got to be careful here because risk has always been important and regulatory has always been important. Yeah. But it gets more important the bigger you are because you've got more exposure. And you're on the radar more. Yeah. You know, it just is what it is. So, plus it's a lot more for me to lose. Yeah. As a founder. Well, I can't afford to.
One of our former colleagues said that if you thought the cost of being compliant is expensive, try being uncompliant. Yeah, yeah. And you could probably get away with that with the ICAW, the SRA regulating the professional sectors, but with them now moving to the FCA, they fine heavily. Yeah. Because if they're anything like me, the way you learn in life normally comes with a hefty cost.
And then you start looking at the cost of being on the right side of risk. And then actually you see it as an opportunity because you know that all the people behind you haven't got the same budget. Yeah. It's as simple as that. So you see it as almost a barrier to entry.
Well, if you're also pivoting your strategy to being at more mid-market focused, that's what you're going to demand. Your customers are going to demand. So you're in that, you're now positioning yourself perfectly in that position of, if you work with an accountant, you get to a certain size, the issue that you were saying before, which is when you're dealing with a large company and they want a top 4 to sign off on it. Yeah. But actually, if you're a scale-up moving into mid-market and you want a Sedulo brand on your books, you're in the perfect position now to hoover up the growing businesses in the lower end of the accounting sector to migrate them over to you guys.
Totally.
So the next part is something that I'm really, really passionate about because I've seen it, but also I'm going through it in my own organization in terms of taking on equity within equity finance within an organization. I saw on your LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago, you had a bit of a live, all the TVs on all the offices, the countdown of the top 100, the top 60 firm now, which I think is even more impressive in the fact that how much money's being thrown around in the sector at the moment. But private equity has found the market and it's sinking its teeth in. Yeah. And I suppose the bit I'd like to ask you is, how do you compete locally and regionally with these other businesses that are now got access to unlimited amounts of cash to grow? How do you compete as Sedulo on those fronts to other organizations who have an unfair advantage in the fact that they've now got cash and they can spend it erratically to grow their ledger?
Yeah. I think the thing is everything in life comes with a con if it's a pro and vice versa. So when I look at the people that have taken the money, and I think the number's 33. I think there's 33 platforms now in the UK that are consolidating. And actually, we probably, with this year's accounts, be at number 55 in size. So if I always look at their problems, not mine, right? I look at them and think, they've got money, so they've got to get it out. Yep. There's not that many people to buy. They're all compete for the same acquisition. They've got to deploy that money. Their business model has changed because everybody who's below, say, partner level, who's maybe cashed out, all of a sudden now you've got the PE that's taken their place. So our bonus is the same. PE going to pay the same bonuses as the old partnership model. I wouldn't have thought so. So how do they keep that tier motivated? So when I look at their problems, I'm not criticising. I'm just saying, is there an opposite positive for me?
Yeah.
If you're constantly embroiled in acquisition, and it's a dogfight to get your acquisition over the line, how focused are you on client service? And again, none of this is a weakness, but I just look at all them and think, I think there's opportunity there for me to stay in my lane. So we're independently owned, so I don't have to cut costs. I don't have to focus on the bottom line. I can focus on investment, make my own decision, invest in my own money. So I'm more autonomous. I can I be more modern if I can invest more? Can I modernise the organisation? Which we've talked a little bit about here, and we've always been a disruptor or innovator. I think even when we were tiny. If I'm independent, can I still do that? Can the ones who've taken money do that? I've just took all our staff to Granada for a Christmas do. 200 grand. It's important for the staff. Would I do that if it was PE owned? Can the PE owned lot do that? So the culture of the ones that were modern, can they maintain that level of investment in culture? The PE see that? These are just questions, right? And I look at them and go, well, I don't have any of those questions. I am the question and I make the answer. So I think whilst they've got huge budgets, they've got to make return on investment. Because that's what they've signed up to. So I think actually for the last year I've been obsessed with staying out of it and going, can I be the biggest independent? Because if you have all these consolidators and huge global, the top 10 are global operators anyway, then you've got this consolidator market, and then you might only have a few of us.
It's interesting how you call them platforms. I like that. It's like, for me, even if you think about pitching in a competitive environment against a logo, and you're very open, which I love about when you lose business. Not when you lose customers, but when you lose opportunities. Because, again, I think it's admirable to look at the upside to every downside, right? And even the way you look to PE, then you're looking at the cons, because their cons can become your pros, right? And in the case that you just talked about, there's that talent piece. How do you keep that talent? Because I can talk for myself that when you get investment, the game changes. You still want to try and create the right culture, but ultimately you're subservient to money. And the investors, and they care about a return, they care about cost of acquisition, lifetime value. Retention of staff's probably low on their list at that point.
So these aren't, what I'm not saying is, PE this, or we work with PE all the time. Right? And we've spoke to dozens of PEs about coming into this firm. And then
is that something that you're seeing even from yourself now, though? If you think about the acquisition strategy of some of these firms, they're buying up a lot of the smaller firms. They might even be segmenting data to look at who's coming up through retirement, no partners. Is there a good exit strategy? But obviously, as you climbing that power ranking, and you're in the top 16 for a serious firm that's got big money, are those knocks on the door coming? And why do you keep saying no? Why aren't you looking at, actually, I've done my bit. I've built up a great legacy, a great brand, and you've got all of the bits there to be able to maximize your enterprise value. Why are you so passionate about being the number one independently owned firm? Why is that important to you?
I mean, it's a question that I have to ask myself a lot, right? When you've got a vision, you've got a vision. And if I was Van Gogh, right, and I started to paint a picture, he wouldn't get a quarter of the way through and somebody say, I'll give you £1 million for that painting. And Van Gogh would go, yeah, I'll take that. Because he's got a picture in his head of what he's going to complete. and then he'll get what he gets for it when he completes his picture. That's the best way I can describe what I'm doing. I have a vision of what we look like in at least 10 years, and I think it looks pretty special. So until I've finished it, I'm just going to keep going, I think. Because what am I going to do anyway? You know, it becomes a bit independent, it becomes a bit deeper and a bit more meaningful. But there are some people who are on the PE ladder who are in it to make the money. I don't see any problem with that. Again, it's not a criticism, it's just a difference. I'm not in it to make a load of money. I'm in it because I see a vision. And I can't paint and I can't sing and I couldn't play football well enough. But I think I can paint a vision of what a best-in-class, world-class consultancy firm looks like. And I'm only on a few chapters in the book. And so again, as I'm looking what I think we can be, I see like the sea parting with all this consolidation. Because I think it makes it easier for me to do that. Because there are people who want to be part of PE. There are people who want to sell to PE. There's people who want to sell, but not to a platform. Well, how many's in that? How many buyers are in that? If there's 33 buyers in the platform pool, how many buyers are in the non-platform pool? So I've got some bids out on some businesses now that are nowhere near the multiplayers of the platforms. But they don't want to sell to a platform.
Why do you think they want to sell to a platform?
I think some people have got... Again, I'm trying to choose my words carefully so I don't look like I'm hyper critical of what's going on. Because I'm not. But there'll be some people that think when you take the money, the founder's essence, the founder's soul might dilute. And I think that's probably fair. Some more than others. And there'll be people who've put their life into their business to get it where they've been able to get it to, that might want to jump on a visionary platform. That's what saying we are. Because we haven't got the pockets to be one. But if you've given 30 years to create something and promise people, perhaps you want to go to and sell to one of the not. You don't want to be a number of somebody who's buying 30 businesses next year.
You want to be
you just want to be the one that's bought, or the two. And perhaps there's more alignment. So I think then, again, comes back to what's the opportunity. Perhaps we're the only bidder. Perhaps we're one of 3 bidders. But at the moment, if we took the money, we'd be the 34th bidder. So I think that's a bigger problem for them than it is for me. Could be wrong. So I think there's opportunity. I think if you've been at a certain level in an organisation and you're not right at the very top, so you're sort of mid-career, perhaps going to PE might not be for you. Perhaps you want to go and sit with the founder, sit with the management team. Perhaps you want to get equity shares in that organisation, which you can go and speak to the founder about. We can't do that with one of these huge consolidators.
Would you say, to go to that point, early in the interview, you were talking how over time you've heavily invested in diversifying the brand, the offering. You've an early adopter of having a data-driven strategy, a sales team. Would you say all of those things that you've invested in over the years, the businesses that are being acquired by the platforms have neglected them? So actually the only way that their business will survive or grow is by being a part of a platform, because if not, the platform or someone like yourself is going to start acquiring their customers anyway.
I'm not even sure they want to grow. I'm not even sure they're that bothered how much the subsidiaries grow.
Right.
I just think they need to buy 10 businesses this year to hit a target of growth. Some are doing it better than others. I see some of the acquisitions that are done, and I think I would never buy that business. Never. It's got no growth potential. But it's been bought, so it adds to the numbers.
From an arbitrage perspective.
So it's a financial engineering project, that.
So I think the huge takeaway from me here is that there's a lot of opportunity in the PE space in this vertical regardless. You know,
Yes.
it's a people heavy sector,
Yeah.
and they're going to be looking at technology, AI to reduce OpEx, grow customer bases, and look at increasing lifetime value by having multiple services. But on the flip side, in your part of the other side of the coin, there's huge opportunities equally for being an independently owned business that's doing all of the right things to grow at the same rate of knots as a PE invested business, but getting a lot more fulfillment for that, being a hell of a lot more control of your own destiny. And I think the main one as well is being able to attract and retain the right amount of people as well. So PE doesn't necessarily have to be the exit. So if you were an independently owned accountant now, who, to use your sort of analogy of Van Gogh, and you've got a vision, what would your advice be to an independently owned accountant now on how to grow their business without looking at the quick get rich scheme of let's just build it up and sell it into one of the platforms?
Do you know the thing is, along my journey, right, was we started before. You start off and you just got to sign clients, right? But signing clients is only going to get you so far. The pace in which you can sign clients, if you're a 500,000 business or a 1 million business you're just adding, you're doing those 1% incremental gains, right? And by the way, over 20 years, there's a fair few of them.
Yeah.
So you can get to a reasonable size, but there aren't that many big accountancy firms in the UK for a reason.
Yeah.
Accountants tend to be risk averse. And the only way you get growth is to have high levels of risk. So when I was growing, I kept looking at, when I was thinking, I want us to be a punchy outfit, you start off, I think there's 40,000 registered accounts in the UK. You start off and you're just competing against everyone. Then you get to £1 million and you think, oh, there's only, say, in Manchester, then there might only have been 20 in that pool. I don't know what the figure was. So you think, well, if I get to 2 million, is that pool 10? And you get to 2 million, that's when I thought, I need to do leads. So that was a big risky move. But I knew that took me from 2 to 4, and I knew the pool of people I was competing with them went from 20 to 10 or 10 to 6 or whatever. So I was constantly motivated to do that. But of course, you had to take risk. The reason why, if we was the same size we're at now in most industries, we wouldn't be a top 55 business because you're in an entrepreneurial landscape where people are more likely to take risk. So if I'm an accountancy firm today and I'm at 1 million quid, or 2 million quid, and go, well, how am I going to get to 3, 4 or 5? I'm going to have to take some risks. I'm going to have to grow out. So how have we done it? We've scaled with new service lines, with different business models, like I said before. We've invested heavily, and we haven't took the profits. Risky. Everything I own's in this business, I'm all in. We've bought acquisitions, and we've opened in new territories. And that's your plan. But you've got to want to do the plan. Most don't. And I think that's fine too. Most, you can have a nice life having a stable accountancy firm, and that's what most people choose. And that's absolutely fine. I just think, I think the ones that are being bought, they're not being bought because they're going to power them. I've bought accountancy firms that are 80 years old. You ain't going to turn a £2 million practice and all of a sudden everybody becomes salesy or driven by new business, and they accept an SDR team and they go, oh, instead of just selling audit now, I'm going to start cross-selling to my clients. No, they're not. They're not even going to, you're not going to go, oh, I've just bought you, can you go on LinkedIn? I once went to buy one in Liverpool once, and he went, you're not going to get me doing that bloody marketing nonsense, are you? Right? We didn't buy him. But on a serious note, you've got that in our industry, right? So you've got the consolidators, the multiplayers are going through the roof. So if you're selling, fair play to you. If you're buying because you've got a high multiplier balance sheet of cash, fair play to you. I just think there's an alternative route. And our route is to stay in our lane. We're doing Dubai next. We're doing Scotland. We've got some acquisitions that don't want to be part of a platform. We're bringing in talent from some of the platforms where they're going, actually, we think we'd rather work and be less of a number.
Yeah.
Because that's why they worked at the place they worked at, right? They didn't want to be a number. Now they've been sold, perhaps they think they're going to be one. So we're an option for alternative talent. And we're not competing in our sector, in our part of our sector now, with loads of people who've took loads of money. So I think we've got quite a nice niche to explore. I could be proved wrong, mate, because I'll tell you now, multipliers are going to go backwards.
That multiplier piece, you talked about accountants being risk adverse, and because those multipliers are so high, there is probably a reluctancy in that mid-level management or younger partners to take on the sort of debt that they would need to now buy out a partner that can get 10 to 12 times if he sells out to one of these platforms.
Yeah.
So, and like you said, when it all dies down, because with every high, there is a low, what do you see the industry looking like once it comes down from this peak? And is it at the peak? Is there still a little bit more it's going to get?
I don't think there's too much more of the peak left because you have to have loads of us to buy. And there aren't. There's only so much consolidating. When the consolidators consolidate is the next phase. So you might get a few more years out of it, and I think multipliers will start going backwards because, as I say, I think multipliers have doubled in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So are people paying too much? Normally what happens, if you flavour of the month, flavour of the month.
Yeah.
You're not flavour forever. And I think our industry's flavour of the month. And at some point, the high levels of multipliers that are being paid today means the returns might not be there in the future.
Yeah.
And
well, when the
market
round
cools.
starts, exactly. Yeah.
Then the market cools.
Yeah.
And I might be twice the size as I am today, doing twice the profit worth the same as I am today. But if I've only half painted the picture anyway.
And I think on the flip side of acquisition and private equity, as we have to do in our job, on the flip side, there's a lot of insolvency and a lot of distress out there. So we won't go into politics or talk about the government.
Can do if you want.
We can do. Being the UK's leading insolvency score, which we were originally designed to do, to identify and spot insolvencies, we're seeing an annual run rate of around about 28,000 insolvencies a year across the entire spectrum, from large to micro-sized businesses. And that's a run rate that's continued to run for the last 2 or 3 years now. And in an industry norm, you'd probably look to see around 12 to 14,000 insolvencies. So there's twice as much distress out there. And you could probably even say that distress is compounding, because when these businesses fail, that money that's not owed or not going to be paid, unfortunately, makes its way into the supply chain. But with all of the distress out there and with the high levels of insolvency, how are you seeing that impact business confidence? Is my first question. And my second question is, how is that actually impacting the overall go-to-market strategy for you in Sedulo?
It's a really interesting one, this, right? Because it's a really interesting one. I look at LinkedIn today, and it is absolutely awash with bad news. Right? And I'll be honest with you, I can't quite understand why. So if you look at things like inflation and you look at interest rates, they're about where they usually are.
Yeah.
If I go back over 20 odd years, that's where they were for years.
Yeah.
3.75%, about 4%, inflation about 3%. If I'm not certain about this, right? But it'd be an interesting conversation. I think a lot of the insolvencies are on the back of COVID and on the back of poor businesses getting lots of money that was offered out in COVID to rescue them when they would have gone pop in COVID.
We are completely aligned.
This is what, and this is just my gut feel, by the way.
Well, businesses weren't able to fail during COVID.
So when I look at like general rules of business, the inflation, FTSE 100, pretty decent. I know most of it trades overseas, but it's a reflection to a degree. You know, exchange rates, all right, they got smashed in Brexit, but they're relatively the same as what they've been. So you start to look at it. And I had this conversation with somebody yesterday in the Be The Standard network group that you were talking about before. And I said, it doesn't feel as bad as what the narrative is. And yet the narrative is always going to be, the economy is always going to thrive or fail on confidence.
Yeah.
More than fact.
Yeah.
And yet everybody seems to be really downbeat. So if I look at our overall, you know the facts that there's double the amount of insolvencies today than what there normally is. In our database of a couple of thousand clients, it's pretty much business as usual.
Yeah.
There are losers, right? I think things like the retail sector, the leisure sector, and the unemployment is going to be an issue, right? Or is an issue. The level of unemployment because of the national living wage rise. That's the biggest killer, if you ask me.
It's interesting you talk about leisure. I would completely agree with you. We ran some statistics recently. One of the highest growth areas for businesses at the moment is back in hospitality, but it's the rise of the dark kitchen. The fact that you don't need a premise on Deansgate and rely on footfall, you can set up a kitchen on the fourth floor of your building and serve out to customers with no overheads. So the business model's changing. You haven't got the fact that you've got to do a big fit out, and yet who's going to fund for my big cooker, the nice furniture? And you're already having to riddle your business with either debt or your own personal investment. You can start up a dark kitchen now. But I just felt it's an interesting one where that industry's starting to pivot and show promise. But again, the challenge will be how do you
also how do you get a table on Friday night somewhere?
You can't in a dark kitchen.
Hey,
you can't in a dark.
I'm telling you can't get a table anywhere. So it is a really interesting one. And I know a few leisure businesses, leisure retailers, and they're flying. You know, so Albert Slosh flying, the Box flying. There's one or two others. I'm talking about the ones that have gone out in the press. They're not my clients, by the way. So, you know, they've gone out in the press recently with great results. So I think there's winners and losers. I think, as I say, a lot of the losers are really losing because they would have, and not all of them, but quite a few of them would have lost and were saved by bounce back loans, COVID loans, government backed loan scheme type stuff. And I wonder whether the narrative, the media narrative needs to change, if I'm honest with you, Richard. So I know it's a bit of a political answer, but the truth of the matter is, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we've got a big problem here because all our clients are going bust, because they're not. Right? Not any more than what they were pre-COVID, let's say. So it's interesting that what the narrative is constantly about how tough the economy is.
So my thought on this, I completely agree with you. I think Seabills and bounce backs gave access to cash to a lot of people that would not have met the risk appetite of a traditional mainstream lender. And that access to cash enabled a business to either grow, fund, or continue to trade for another year or two. We're now seeing that washout come through because that money's now disappeared or evaporated. The other side to COVID was forbearance on creditors. So the ability for businesses being so paranoid on trading and continue to trade. I remember when, as soon as we went into lockdown, our business almost doubled in that first 12 months because there was a paranoia of, is my supplier going to be there? And is my customer going to be there? And they wanted to move away from just a traditional credit report to, no, I want to know insolvency. Where is it? And am I attached to it in any way, shape or form? But you had this part where the government was almost enforcing, because the court shut down, you weren't able to issue CCJs, petitions to wind up done. Payment terms crept from 30 to 60 to 90 to 120 days. So I agree with the point that you're making that those businesses would have been able to wash through, but the actual impact on the supply chain has had to trade through it. So now the debt owed by businesses is a lot greater than what it would have been if there was no pandemic. They would have still been hit with an insolvency. But in industries now that are tackling, it's a race at the moment in terms of margin and winning new business, there is now I think a bigger fear that if I do get hit by an insolvency and I am in one of those sectors, it could be the one that actually ends my business.
Yeah.
Whereas if 2 years ago, I could have probably absorbed it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a bigger challenge for a lot of people that are dealing with creditors.
So do you see the next 2 years it continuing at insolvency at the level it's at? Or do you see it going back down to normal?
So I don't think we are at the point where they're going to reduce short term. Do I think they have peaked in terms of the high? Yes.
Yeah.
That's opinion, not based on any sort of data. I'm challenging our data scientists with an exercise this quarter to produce an insolvency forecast for the year ahead. But I expect them to still be in excess of 20,000, 22,000 insolvencies in the next 12 months. I think the challenge with most businesses is, without forcing more insolvencies, how do you gradually bring back your days beyond terms with your creditors without putting additional pressure on them as well? If I've been able to now trade with you at 120 days and you want to get me that pad down to 30, how do I do that without causing me pain, if that makes sense? And I think you're going to see more aggressive collections in the next 12 to 18 months. But it'll be interesting to see what insolvencies. I still think insolvencies will still continue to be high.
Right.
And I still think the unsecured debt in the vehicles that go bust will be higher than in previous years as well. And again, it's just whether those businesses in the supply chain can withstand that cascade in down onto their organizations itself. Support the cost of growth comes with the cost of onboarding, and the regulators, again, putting more pressure on professional service firms to know who they're doing work with, KYC, KYB. What are you doing internally to ensure that meeting those demands by the regulator doesn't impact the way that you onboard customers, but also slows your growth down?
It comes down to people and technologies, right? So red flag alert, one, right? So all our KYC stuff includes your work on your platform. So we're always going to be fighting that challenge, right? Of growth, right?
Yeah.
And being compliant with the growth. And as I said earlier, the larger we get, the more regulatory pressure there is on us to be that. So we've brought in a chief risk officer. We've had a CTO. Before the chief risk officer, we had a CTO, and he's been with us for 2 years, and he was the guy who brought in red flag alert. And as I said to you off camera before, we use red flag on all our onboarding processes. And the chief risk officer's coming in, and he will, what I'm hoping he'll do actually is go through red flag and make sure we're utilising technology to its fullest. Because we have to do that, because we have to keep pace with being compliant, whilst keeping pace with the organic growth that we've got on our plans for the next 3 or 4 years.
I'd like to talk to you now about giving back and philanthropy, as people like to call it. It's the posh word for being decent, I believe. But knowing you for how long I've known you for now, you've showed me a different side of business owners are about. A lot of people look at entrepreneurs and business owners as quite selfless. They're in it for the money. They want the Gucci, the cars, the houses, etc. But one thing that I was blown away from when I first had the pleasure of being a part of your network was how much you actually give back. And I understand a little bit about your roots. You come from sort of a humble beginning, a little bit like myself. Why is it so important to you to give back?
I think there's a number of answers there, and they're all intertwined. I think the first part is when you start out in life to achieve something, we're all trying to look after ourselves. You've got to look after yourself before, and in your immediate family, your immediate household first. There was a point where I used to think 25 grand a year was so much money. How can somebody possibly spend that? And of course, no matter whether in a job, you always want to earn that, and then you earn that, and you want to earn that, and then you earn that, and you're never satisfied, by the way, with whatever you earn. And if you own a business, you want to be £1 million turnover, but when you get to 1 million, you want 2. When you want 2, you want 4. And then you soon start to realise that numbers aren't going to make you satisfied. So that's the first part. And it doesn't matter what the number is, you always think, well, if I did get to that, I'd probably be satisfied, and we're not. So that's the first part. The second part is I grew up on school dinners, and I feel very angry sometimes at how my life could have turned out. I think the education system is not meant to get people like me to where I got to, because nobody else really who I grew up with ended up in a similar lifestyle, doing similar things to me. So I'm quite angry that kids don't get to fulfill the potential. And I think that's because partly the education system, but I think there's a society system, and I think there's a social media system. For example, in this country, we don't really reward success, but we champion failure. And so it stops people trying. And I think I'm lucky, so that's quite deep to me. So when I kind of got to a point where I was never happy and never satisfied despite the success that the outside world might deem, I had to look at what I was doing it for. And I'm doing it for, once you've done it for your own family, it's like, well, can I just go this further out, and then can the next ripple be that far out? And then you also realise in life, and you'll know this from the Be The Standard network, that purpose is the single most important thing in life. And whether or not you retire at football at 35, or your sport, and you see most of them fall off, or you sell your business and you see most of them fall off, it comes down to a purpose. So a selfish reason for doing it is there'll always be kids that need help. And as long as there's kids that need help, we'll be here to help as many of them as we physically can, and we'll never get through them all. So it's an endless purpose and an endless goal. So that's another reason for doing it. Another selfless, selfish balance reason from a team perspective is, we just actually took the decorations down today for Christmas. We've just delivered 15,000 presents to 1,300 kids in the care system. And the amount of the kids win, but the organisation wins, because when you see us wrapping 15,000 presents, and that is a serious activation, people are doing a day's work and then doing 4, 5, 6 hours of wrapping, choosing, buying and selecting gifts and getting them activated to the kids, bespoke gifts. It creates a culture, and it creates a feeling of team, and it creates a feeling of an organisation that's doing the right thing. And I think every good organisation should do good things. Every good organisation should do good things. And plenty do, and some don't. And the ones that don't, I think, sad. I think inside, do they really have a special organisation where the team, the culture, the buy-in is as strong as the ones that authentically give back? I don't mean corporate social responsibility.
Yeah.
That's doing something because you've been told to do it.
That's KPI.
It's not genuine. I think the ones that genuinely care, in the end, the selfishness will turn into, or the selflessness will turn into, karma will come good in the end anyway. It's a bit like those that want to have a business to get rich. Just build a brilliant business and you probably get rich if that's what you want to do. But if you focus on getting rich, you probably won't.
And what's the bigger, because obviously for people that don't know you, who are part of my network perhaps, you start the Sedulo Foundation. How much did it raise last year?
Well, we raised 300,000 quid, something like that, about 300 grand.
And what's the ambition? What's the goal? You've grown the business by 20% year on year. What's your overall goal over the next 2 or 3 years with the foundation?
Well, we're 3 years into the foundation, because the activation, it started with a toy appeal. It went from a toy appeal I just described to family dinners on the back of it. Then when COVID came, some schools reached out to us and said, these kids haven't got rubbers and pens and pencils, let alone laptops and iPads. So we did a back to school campaign, which again, we send out about 50,000 pieces of schooling. And then the school said, that's great, but they're not getting hot meals over the summer. So we decided to do Nando's vouchers. Now, you can buy cheaper food than Nando's, right? But we wanted these kids who tend to be bullied to be included in the conversation about going to a Nando's. Otherwise, they're excluded. And we partnered with JD, so they got, you know, they might get a Adidas or a Nike water bottle or a PE bag, or we started to get them so they've got some brand identification. So we did that. And then we found out that all the girls that we were helping in our ecosystem, which I'll come on to in a sec, weren't attending school because of period. They didn't have period products. So that became quite serious, because if you're going to say to a girl, here's period products, there's no point giving it her for 1 month. You've got to give it her for all her academic life. Yeah. And that's what we decided to do. So that started to become then quite a big campaign. You can get quite upset about talking about it. Yeah. And then we started to work with the boys, because they don't have toothpaste and they don't have deodorant, so they smell, so they get bullied and get excluded. So we decided, well, if we're going to help them, we've got to help them until they're 18, their academic life. And that all became then how we're touch points with them throughout 0 to 16 with a toy appeal. We dip in at 11 when they go to high school. We follow them then 12, 13, 14, 15 with either hygiene packs and period packs. We've just started doing 14, age 14, bringing them in a mentorship into the workplace. At age 16, we touch point with them now, because we now send them out the first adult wardrobe pack, because the kids we deal with are still walking around in school uniform after they've left school, because it's the only clothes that they've got. So that was the latest activation last year. So the key now is we've got about 2,000 people in this system, and the key is to do more for that 2,000 people so that we get them into jobs. Coming back to what I said before, that allows them to reach their potential. That's the next goal. Beyond that, I'm not sure where it goes, but I see it as a global foundation and not just a national one, which is at the moment.
How long have we been doing it for now?
Well, it's interesting, mate, because we've been...
Obviously, these things are in transition.
We've been buying the toys. This comes back to not being corporate social responsibility. We've been buying the toys since day one, so 17 years ago. So they might be... We're just about to do the work this year of how long has each kid been in.
Yeah.
Right?
That'll be... We attend your summer ball every year. It's a highlight of the social calendar, but also it's an emotional night. Yeah. You get up on stage most years, and it's something that's very close to your heart, and I think it inspires everybody in that room what you're doing to try and do more to give back. I've got a vision this year, potential 1 year, where behind you on the monitor there is that child that had that first gift, who's now getting his first job, maybe as an apprentice here. Yeah, because we are having to sophisticate it like that, because it's okay giving kids respite, but in the end, what you want to do is change the direction of travel. And just giving toys is not going to do that, unfortunately. But it does give a bit of respite. So the idea now is, somebody said to me, how many kids do you want to do at Christmas? And I'm like, I don't want to do any more kids. I want to do 1,300 kids, but make sure once they're in the system, they never leave until they come out of it better. And just to touch on what you said there, the support we get from you and all the other people in and around our client base is incredible. I think one of the most pleasing part is, if you like, how we've been able to create the framework for everybody else to do good. That's what I think's most pleasing, because we've become the facilitator of loads of people. You know, the guys at Roxy, obviously, you know Matt quite well. They did 100 children. And they have their own, you know, then they come in and wrap gifts. So we've created the structure, and we're creating the ecosystem. And I think that's what's going to allow us to escalate this at some serious scale in the future. But for now, the most important part is seeing how many Chelseas, Billies, Bobs have come through the system and now getting close to that, actually, and now we can change the direction. This is your life in 30 years when you're grey.
We'll see. I'm getting grey.
And then some kid comes out and goes, I got my first toy there. Yeah. And I now own my fastest growing independently owned accountancy.
There you go. There you go. But I do come back to what I say before. there's a lot of intrinsic selfish reasons for doing it. The feel good factor, the purposeful factor. But at the end of the day, mate, it's a win-win. And ultimately, the kids win.
We'll leave it at that. Paul Cheetham,
Top man.
Chief Executive of Sedulo.